Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, that weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly to discuss Mr. Davis casting a pall over the Brownback campaign, millennials moving up to downtown, and next year's mayor's race in Kansas City may be a dandy. But first, our Ruckus headliner, prominent economist Chris Kuehl of Armada Corporate Intelligence. The president of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank says interest rates should be hiked and hiked now. According to Esther George, some of the policy benchmarks that we looked at and have been looking at for some time are already signaling that we should be above zero interest rates.
I think a very natural response when you get to this point is worrying that you might derail the recovery. But then again, we have seen data come in stronger than we expected. So the labor markets have progressed faster than some of the forecasts have suggested they would.
All right, so Chris, let's talk about this and much more. Is it time for the Fed to raise the interest rate? And if it does, what's going to be the consequence?
It probably is time. We're sitting on a situation now where the interest rate has been so low that it's been encouraging really high-risk behavior on the part of investors. We saw evidence of that when we got the second quarter GDP numbers. They were very good. We were like, yay, we're growing at 4%. And the stock market fell by 500 points. Which is an indication that a lot of investors were worried about interest rates going up sooner than later. The other issue, of course, is inflation. We haven't dealt with it for a long time. We've almost forgotten what it's like to have inflation, but it is a really vicious economic problem.
And the Fed interest rate now is about zero,
It's zero.
Right?
It's for all intents and purposes zero. And we're not alone. I mean, almost every central bank in the world has rates at least as low as that. And they're all talking about when do we start to raise them. We know that it's going to stress the economy. We know that it's going to create a little bit of a downturn as far as growth is concerned. The issue is, can we handle it? And Esther George makes the point that we're stronger than we thought we would be at this point, and we are. I mean, our interest rate policy has done us some good, but it is probably now time to move in the other direction.
Let's get local. What about the Kansas City overall economy, metro area? How would you assess it, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say probably around a 6, maybe even a 7. We're behaving as we always are. We're one of the most diverse economies in the country. At any one time, there's a part of the economy that's not doing well in Kansas City, and at any one time, there's a part that is doing well. And we're right in that same boat right now. We've got some growth sectors and some that aren't growing. Our unemployment rate is a little bit higher than the rest of the country's, but not alarmingly.
Let me ask you about employment. Where are the opportunities? Where are the jobs in Kansas City?
They sort of fall into 3 categories. One is healthcare, particularly if you include Cerner. That's a big employer, a growing employer in the Kansas City area, but healthcare in general has been growing. Strangely enough, manufacturing. Manufacturing is a key part of the U.S. economy. It's a key part of the Kansas City economy. It's mostly small to mid-sized manufacturers. They are hiring if they can find the people with the qualifications to work in their shops.
Hey, let's talk about Sprint. A new company owns Sprint. A new CEO has come to town, Marcelo Claure. He's engaged in price cutting and increasing the amount of data that subscribers can receive, and has started almost a data war among the telecommunications company. What's your assessment of the immediate future for Sprint?
I think they're in a good position to survive. How much they grow is the big question, because they're competing with 2 of the largest telecom companies in the world, and trying to really chip away at Verizon and AT&T is tough. There was a lot of frustration that they were not able to pull the deal off with T-Mobile. And now they're sort of reacting, saying, if we're going to have to do this on our own, we're going to have to be almost a guerrilla tactics company and force changes when it comes to the bigger competitors. I think going after data plans, frankly, the vast majority of people under the age of 30 have forgotten that it's a phone. It is really just something that is for texting and data, and that's where the war is going to be.
A couple of quick questions with quick answers.
Sure.
A few years ago, you were very high on the future of Wyandotte County. Are you still?
I still am. A lot of development in the western part, eastern part still lagging, but it's getting there.
And downtown Kansas City, we're going to be talking on the panel later about a story in the New York Times that says Downtown is now a cool place to live, especially for millennials. My recollection is that you were positive about the growth in downtown Kansas City. Are you still?
I still am. I think it was a two-step process. We're in the middle of the second step. First, we built the things downtown that people would want to have some connection to, entertainment and the like. Then the next thing that had to happen was housing. And as long as the millennials are interested in lofts and apartments and urban living, Kansas City will thrive.
Chris, it was great to see you again. Thanks so much for coming by. That's economist Chris Kuehl, managing partner of Armada Corporate Intelligence in Kansas City. And now, let's go start a ruckus. And it is time to meet the Ruckettes. Tony Bateo is the blogger behind the popular and often incisive website, Tony's Kansas City. Marcus Leach is a local political consultant. Mary O'Halloran is a media and communications consultant, and Woody Cozad is president of the Cozad Company, a government relations firm. Welcome back to Mary and Woody, and welcome aboard to Tony and Marcus. Well, depending on which poll you read, the Kansas governor's race between incumbent Sam Brownback and House Minority Leader Paul Davis is either a virtual tie, or Davis is ahead by 10 points, or Brownback holds a slight 2-point lead, or Davis holds a 2-point lead. In other words, as most pollsters now put it, the race is a toss-up. Now, one might expect an incumbent Republican and a GOP bastion to have a massive lead, but Brownback's problem appears to be tax cuts he championed as a step, he said, toward economic revival. Democrats say instead the governor's program is causing economic reversal. The election's more than 2 months away, and in politics, that is several eternities. So let's give Brownback and Davis some advice. First, what does Mr. Davis need to do, Marcus, to keep his momentum and become the next governor of Kansas?
Mike, Davis has put on a clinic against Brownback, and most polls show if the election were held today, Davis would win by a slim margin, but it's not. He's peaked too early. You know, he's going through his entire campaign plan 8 weeks before the election, and now as we enter the most critical phase of this election, those tax cut revenue enhancement arguments are stale, and Brownback has been given too much time to adjust his message and also to focus on getting out the vote, and that's where this is going to be the difference. Davis needs to do two things. He needs to first convince moderate Republicans not to go home to Brownback, and second, somehow match that Brownback get out the vote conservative machine, and that's going to be difficult because Brownback's field operation will be surgical.
Shortly after the primary, Davis was on MSNBC television, was asked by Chuck Todd about his plans. Were he to become governor, what's he going to do about the tax rates imposed by Governor Brownback? Let's take a look at what he said.
What we've proposed is that we need to freeze the rates where they are at starting on January 1 of 2015. And then we need to take a look at our tax code from top to bottom and figure out how we can get our economy moving again.
Marcus, very quickly, why would he want to keep the tax rates where they are when he says they have been destructive to the state?
It's one of those unfortunate situations where the policy and the politics are different. You know, the Kansas is in the situation it's in for the last several years of tax cuts, and he knows that coming in office, there's nothing he can do to change that. You know, this is just the political message. You know, Kansas is on a track that, unfortunately, it will be on for the next decade.
Over here to Woody. What about Brownback? What path does he need to follow to get back to the governor's mansion? Well, Cedar Crest.
He's got $1 million more cash on hand, and he is doing what he needs to do right now. He started, and that's running a lot of ads. His theory in his campaign is that the public media, the earned media has been against him, and it's been heavy, but that it's, to be kind, exaggerated, and that he has answers to it, and he's giving them in those ads. I think those ads are pretty good. I think they're pretty effective. And the tendency of that is to do what Marcus said. Okay, you've given me your best shot. Now here I'm coming, and as Marcus said, he's 2 months out. So he's saying, look, our unemployment rate's low, we've created this many jobs. The other thing that happens between Republicans and Democrats, we talk about tax rates, is this. Are you worried about government revenue, or are you worried about jobs? And the Democrats are always worried about whether the state has enough revenue, and the Republicans are always talking about whether we're creating enough jobs. And they kind of pass like two ships in the night. One of the Brownback ads kind of takes that head on, but generally they don't even talk about the same thing.
Tony, Brownback says the sun is still shining in Kansas, and don't let anyone tell you different. Do you think he's right?
You know, for a conservative governor, I guess it would seem that way. I think that he's doing an effective job in messaging, and that Reagan-esque message kind of harkens to what they're doing. I noticed this really great ad from the Kansas Governors Association this week. They tagged Davis as liberal Lawrence legislator Paul Davis. You know, really ominous tones. A tax fight overall doesn't seem that bad for a Kansas governor, given that Paul Davis would have a really, really hard time selling like, yeah, I want to keep your taxes relatively high. It's a really hard message to get out there.
Yeah, Mary, what does Davis do about that? He says the taxes have been cut too much, but he's saying let's freeze them.
Well, I was chatting with Jeff Rowe the other night about, and he thinks that Paul Davis will win this race, and just to quote, the guy was pretty sharp about these things. And I asked him why, and he said, well, because he strategized this thing perfectly. I mean, he hasn't said much about his own ideas. To just let Governor Brownback be out there having to defend the fact that there's only $29 million left in the budget. The reserves of the state are gone. Next year will be $300 million in debt, or in deficit of his budget. It'll take about $700 million to bring us back where we were just a couple of years ago with school funding. Tuition rates are up, and there isn't a single economic factor that he has claimed to be true as a result of his tax plan, his tax cutting, that's beneficial to the people. Poverty's up. We have not progressed, and as other states have around us, and that's why the investor rating groups have downrated our bonds
unemployment,
3 times.
Unemployment is down in Kansas. In 2010, in July, was 7.1%. In July of 2014, it was 4.9%. The Missouri unemployment rate
down
was 6.5%.
lower in the states regionally, and that's what Moody's and Standard & Poor's said was wrong with Kansas right now.
But the GDP outgrew every state that borders them except Colorado.
Well, now we know what's wrong with Kansas and what may be right with Kansas. Until last weekend, it looked like Sly James would glide unimpeded into a second term as Kansas City mayor. But a candidate from the past is back, and former Councilman Dan Coffran says it is very likely he will run. Kansas City Star political writer Steve Kraske talked with the 63-year-old lawyer, who summarizes his differences with James this way: basics versus bling, saying the city should focus more on streets, law enforcement, and children's programs, and less on streetcars and airports. Coffran was defeated by then Mayor Emanuel Cleaver in 1995, but carried 4 of the 6 council districts. See a way to City Hall for Mr. Coffran? Woody?
Well, you used the word path. The path I see for him to City Hall is the glide path on the mayor's plane if it comes in too low and crashes. Otherwise, I don't know what his path to City Hall is. Look, I agree with Coffran. I mean, philosophically, when he says basics versus bling, I say hooray. But Sly is a likable guy, and people, in fact, do
So
like
he has
him.
to be embroiled in some sort of a crisis, some sort of a scandal.
Wrong. He's having policy reversals, that they're real, yeah. But I don't see the people of Kansas City throwing him out of office because he didn't get his TDD extended south on the trolley.
The race for mayor in Kansas City is always just weighted by personality.
That's right.
And my experience last time working with Mike Burke running against Sly James, what a formidable man he is in so many ways. Well, Mike was formidable too, did very well. But the point is, Dan Coffran is a good guy, and everybody knows that. He has a really sterling record in the city council and as an advocate for people, mostly neighborhood development and neighborhood.
Was he not active in the battle on the Country Club Plaza when the Olsenelli Sugar building was proposed?
Yes. Yeah. He was great on that.
And he's been the
really
chairman
good.
of the Citizens Association.
He's great on 2 things: real estate development law and arbitration. He's an excellent arbitrator.
Can he beat James, though?
Well, you know, nobody thought he could beat Emanuel Cleaver.
And
yet,
he didn't.
But he came, my goodness, he carried all the districts but the
center of the city. But he lost by 10%.
Well, of course. But the point is he carried the rest of the city. So, yes, he can get votes.
Over here to Tony. When we say basics versus bling, what does that mean? What are basics? What is bling?
Well, you know, I think the toy train, a phrase that I'm taking credit for right now. My blog.
I want you to talk about that later, too.
Yeah, we're talking about the toy train versus something that I think is important. I think is a real trend for SLY. Is this week? It's happening. It's going to happen this afternoon. The ambulance billing service outsourcing petition that's going through, and this is a policy decision that Woody was talking about. Now, what happened is 8,000 valid signatures are up to reverse SLY James policy. That's from the urban core. That's churches. That's grassroots groups. They've collected this to reverse a policy decision. When you have something like that happening, I have to doubt, if you really drill down and go into these neighborhoods, how popular Mayor SLY James is. People love him. I want to go have a drink with him. But are you going to vote for him?
Mike, let's be honest here.
Oh, no. Let's not be honest.
It's about as exciting as watching wet paint dry, and that presents two real problems. People don't open up their wallets and contribute to that, or they don't get up early and go to vote before work for the promise of a more basic future. When has a mayor who is scandal-free, has a campaign war chest, has decreased crime, and brought thousands of jobs to the city ever lost an election? And there is no path for Dan Coffin here.
Is building a new airport basics or bling?
Well, see, that's the problem. You know, our city government is finally functional. You know, this council is able to present things. You know, agree or disagree on an issue, fine, but city government is working again, and we're having these conversations that are necessary. And I think SLY James
we've had a functional city council before. Kay Barnes is,
it's fair to argue that the public perception of city council prior to the James administration was negative,
and
that's
the way
that brought. Absolutely,
and of course, that was dysfunctionality walking down the street. I mean,
and Coffin's playbook is Funkhauser 2.0. You know, he starts off with this basic versus bling, which is exceptionally awful.
I think that's right, and I think SLY gets to run ads that remind you of what you thought of city government before he came into office, and then said, you know, it's better now. Now, I'm with Tony on this. I'm with Coffin on this. Basics versus bling. I think he's got policy problems. I wonder if that's what elects a mayor in Kansas City, as long as people are feeling kind of generally good about the city.
Well, it depends upon whether the media allows it to happen. I noticed a particularly strongly worded column from Yale Al-Bahaq in the paper this morning. I just want to say, wait, Yale, let something develop here before you come down too hard on Dan. Dan's a fighter. If he decides to go into the race, he'll.
If you look at that article, Dan Coffin, you know, just goes to the comments section and tries to rebuttal the arguments. That is the type of campaign you have to run when you don't have the resources. Yeah. This is an at-large election that will cost at least $250,000. He doesn't get there.
Tony, don't most mayors want to leave a legacy, and isn't that usually some type of bling?
Yeah, it usually is, and that's been the problem. That's been the problem. That's why we have a Sprint Center downtown that I was supposed to get a hockey team, and I don't have a hockey team yet. So that's been the problem in Kansas City. And let's not forget, we're early out. There are more people. There are people putting pressure on other city councilmen. Terry Riley, if his wife approves it, he might be running for mayor. There's a lot of people out there who might be running for mayor. We are very, very early.
Tony, the problem is we don't have a hockey team.
Absolutely. You made a $300 million promise. It said, I'm going to get some kind of pro sports team. And instead I get, you know, Nickelback and Miley Cyrus. I want my hockey team.
Well, and the arena loses money. If it weren't for the tax subsidy, it's a money loser.
Yeah. It has a guaranteed money stream from some taxes that were imposed.
Number one in the nation in something.
And if people are very well managed.
Very well managed. And
absolutely, but it loses money anyway.
If people are wondering why we're talking about the mayor's election and how far away is it, the primary is next April, and the general would be June the 23rd. New York Times has made it official. Downtown Kansas City is now a cool place to live. In a story describing how millennials are flocking there, the Times says downtown is now cool instead of a dreary place to drive immediately away from after 8 hours at the office. The Times gives credit to various public and private projects, including the future streetcar line and what it calls the holy grail of downtown, a full-service grocery store. Are the stars now aligning perfectly? Is downtown a millennial nirvana? I ask you, Tony.
If millennials want to live like Buddhist monks and take a vow of poverty, then yes, because what we're seeing still is that whether you're looking at Brookings or Mark, from 2000, we're still down jobs. Depending on who you believe, either 10 or 20,000 jobs, maybe even more than that. So yeah, it very well might be a millennial nirvana, considering the white elephants like the toy train. I mean, that thing's eating up $100 million for 2.2 miles of mass transit.
On your website, Tony's Kansas City, you talk a lot about what you call the mayor's toy train. Why such vehement opposition to it?
Well, because you look at what it does, it doesn't really serve a purpose other than tourism, other than a tourist attraction. It's a toy. I mean, it's not really meant to transport people. It's meant to look nice, make people feel great about each other, make it seem like we're making strides toward transit. But Bill Nigro tried the same thing in Westport and all through downtown, all through the party districts. It didn't work for him, and he had more mobility.
Bill Nigro train? Do we remember the Bill Nigro?
Yeah, the trolley.
The little trolley.
Yeah,
there you go.
Last summer.
Not exactly comparable.
Well, Marcus, you were one of the consultants for the effort to expand the toy train downtown to, I'm kidding about
Absolutely.
toy train, to expand it eastward and southward. It was defeated. Well, what about Tony's argument that it's really nothing of any great consequence in the 2-mile corridor downtown to the River Market?
It's simply not true. Right now, downtown occupancy is at 98%. That means that other 2% on the residential side is people in transition. The lease expires, someone else is moving in. Downtown is a vibrant place to live. Whether you look at the performance of the Sprint Center being a shortfall, this is the engine that drives the community. Right now we have some of the most remarkable young professional organizations making this a destination city. And when we say millennials, we're not just talking about hipsters going to parties. We're talking about young professionals, leaving their jobs at places like Cerner and Sprint and choosing to live downtown and spend their money downtown. That's a great thing.
Let me show you a quote from the New York Times story and get all of you to comment briefly on it. It says, "We got the infrastructure now to support 40,000 residents, and there's pent-up demand for housing." That, according to Sean O'Byrne, Vice President for Business Development at the Downtown Council, used to be at Union Station for a while, as I recall. "I think the next 10 years are going to be spectacular for downtown because the groundwork has been laid to make development happen." You think so, Woody?
Well, the contrast is between what Tony said and what Marcus said. 98% occupancy on residents. Office space occupancy, 70%. There's a 30% vacancy rate in downtown office space. Now, what that works out to is a lot of places with higher than that, and then the newer buildings are nearly full. So those older buildings are sucking down the rents you can get. Somebody's going broke on some of these buildings at the end of the day. There's no new construction on the office side going on, not only in downtown, but in the metro area, frankly, this year for office buildings, very little. But downtown is growing as a place to live, and it is declining as a place to work.
I thought there were some office developments going on downtown as being refurbished.
Let me put it this way: the real estate guys send me their report so I can prepare for Ruckus, and it says in there, there isn't much new construction in Metro Kansas City.
Well, not new construction, but this is...
Wait a minute, there's tremendous construction of apartments downtown. That,
30% occupancy rate is not a good problem.
Those are being converted to residential houses, and that means you get property taxes and sales taxes at things like the grocery store. That's so we can rely on those.
Governments lose money on residents and make money on business.
Apartment construction is huge, and a new one every day. And now we've got Power and Light deciding that the deal is done. They've got all their goodies from
Tony, there's certainly a lot of construction on the streetcar starter line downtown. Took me a while to get to that. Talking about construction downtown, there's plenty of that.
Just say toy train. It's much easier.
Haven't you been critical of some of the construction work that's being done, how it impedes business and the market?
Yeah, it's a mess. And the city market people have complained. You have very angry merchants who are willing to, some don't know if it's directly related, but they're willing to blame every bump on it. But I mean, we talk about this real estate boom, and in much the same way where a hole in the ground with a liar standing next to it is a gold mine. I've never seen a real estate agent that didn't say that now was the time to buy.
All right, starter streetcar line. It is time now for... Yes, it's Roast and Toast. Your turn to celebrate or eviscerate people and events making news. Looks like our viewers prefer email to corresponding with us by other means. Here's one from Marcia Larenberg. My roast goes to Mayor James and the City Council for their shameful snake oil campaign to sell 52 square miles of taxpayers on the $500 million, less than 8 miles streetcar expansion project as better transportation and more jobs. And a special roast to City Councilman Russ Johnson for his outrageous mafia-style plan to ram the bill for the streetcar expansion down taxpayers' throats with or without their approval. Glad Ruckus is back. Thanks for your consideration. No surprise, some viewers commented on the revamped Ruckus show. Linda Erringer writes, "This is a toast. Welcome back, Ruckus. Roundtable members, your program is informative and helpful, but roast, please stop talking over each other. Take turns like adults." And finally, from Brett Regnery, "I would like to roast the producers of Ruckus for taking the roast and toast segment from the panelists and putting it into the hands of us boobs, the viewers. I will forever miss Mary blasting Governor Brownback for cutting some funding of an organization that helps 32 residents of the state of Kansas, or Gwen for toasting President Obama for whatever he happened to do that week, having the courage to eat a bowl of Cheerios for breakfast, for example." To submit your roast or toast, email us at ruckus@kcpt.org. Call us at 816-398-4404. Tweet us at #RuckusKC or go to our website, kcpt.org/ruckus, where you can now upload a video of your roast or toast. And that is Ruckus for this week. We're away next week, but back the following Thursday. Thanks for watching, and good night.